have taken place where China has accused the U.S. of bullying in the recent crisis happening in Tehran, in Iran right now, in the Persian Gulf. Due to economic sanctions on the country, Iran has bypassed the uranium stockpile level that was agreed in the JCPOA agreement. Also, the upcoming meeting between Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Donald Trump is expected to sort of improve on the distrust that had taken place between the two countries. And the trust deficit is expected to improve after this meeting. We're going to be discussing this with our guests today. And at the end of our program, we'll also be having a look at the stock market today, which at the moment, stocks have been looking very slow. The movement in the stock market has been sort of slow due to the fact that investors are still hesitant about the developments in the economy, the rising interest rates, the rupee devaluation, all the conditions, structural reforms after the IMF package. They're still waiting to look and see, and several sectors have been affected by these developments. So let's begin our discussion today with our guests in our studio. We have with us Ambassador Asif Durrani, who is a former ambassador and has served in the US as well as in Iran, Afghanistan, and India and London. And we also have with us Dr. Musarrat Amin, who is an international relations expert. Thank you, both of you, for being with us today on PTV1. First of all, Ambassador Durrani, I'd like to start with the situation with China accusing the U.S. of bullying. And this statement was made by their Foreign Office. And what is China's stand right now in this whole issue? Obviously, they're one of the countries that were involved in the JCPOA agreement, and then the U.S. backed out and started to impose sanctions on Iran. And as a reaction, Iran has increased its uranium stockpile, and they've threatened to continue doing something every 60 days. And then the next action that they take is supposed to be something their Foreign Office has said is going to be even beyond. So what would you like to say about this situation and China's involvement in all of this?
I think that China has warned the U.S. Because U.S. is responsible for all this standoff. U.S. was a signatory to a nuclear deal called Joint Comprehensive Program of Action, JCPOA,
right,
in which 5 permanent members and Germany, they are the signatories. From the very beginning, President Trump, even before his election, during his election campaign, he was propounding the idea that this deal is a bad deal. In fact, it was there to discredit Obama's endeavors to bring in Iran into international mainstream, and also bind Iran to obey the international non-proliferation norms. Once the deal was signed, till the Obama regime, there was quite a bonhomie between US and Iran, although US did not lift United States-related sanctions even during Obama's administration. Subsequently, when Mr. Trump he got elected, there was already he put the signatories to notice, and last year formally he withdrew. We all know the history. Right now, the Chinese, their stand has been from the very beginning very clear.
Right.
They said that China can abide by the UN sanctions, not individual countries impose sanctions, and hence they rejected US sanctions against Iran, and they also announced that they will continue their business with Iran as usual. I can also add here that China is Iran's largest trading partner, with a trade volume of $30 billion.
Okay.
Almost $22 billion worth of oil is purchased by Iran, by China, and they refused when President Trump declared in the first week of May this year that the countries who have been given exemption to import oil will no more be enjoying this facility. There were 8 countries, including India, Japan, South Korea, China, of course, and Italy and Turkey. These were the countries. But China even then had made it clear that they don't subscribe to the American sanctions.
Right.
And then their contention is that it would be a setback to the disarmament regime, to international treaties, if the countries, once they sign it and then they withdraw from it. So by that, if that can become a precedent, then in that case there will be no value of any international treaty
Exactly.
which has been signed by the countries.
Yeah.
So it is also a setback to international disarmament regime, to which United States is responsible.
Has this happened before, that in the U.S. that a treaty that a previous government made, the next president comes and just goes back on that? Because obviously then nobody's going to trust the word of that particular
United
country.
States has a history on, at least I can recall, 2 agreements. One is CTBT, Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty,
Okay.
which United States signed but has not ratified yet.
Okay.
And it is almost now 25 years. But they continue to pressurize the countries to abide by the CTBT, including Pakistan.
Right.
And they want us to sign it and ratify it.
Right.
Our contention is that it's better you should ratify it, and then ours is not a problem, we'll follow. Second is the International Criminal Court, which United States signed it and then unsigned it. So this is the precedent. United States has left bad precedents as far as these
And this
international.
prior to the Trump era?
Of course, these
Yeah,
are.
okay.
So, but
it's not
in
just
the
present
United
era.
States, you know, the foreign policy, its gestation period is 4 years from administration to administration.
Yeah.
Of course, if a president is re-elected, then you can talk about 8 years. So each president leaves his legacy.
Okay, and then
So-
anything can happen after that. And then the
This is
Paris
possible.
Agreement as well is one of the treaties that President Trump has.
On environment, United States has been the worst polluter.
Exactly.
And they have not been signing that, not been fully subscribing to that, although
Right.
partially they do.
Right. So, Dr. Musarat, would you like to add to that? That how is now China stand against the U.S. and China have just decided that their trade war is going to be halted. They've just recently spoken, the 2 premiers, President Trump and the leader of President Xi of China. So their trade war has kind of, their tensions have gone, you know, pared back a little bit. But then now this statement coming out that the U.S. is using bullying tactics in the Persian Gulf. So what would you like to say about that?
Basically, Asif Sab has said many points, so I just want to add a little bit. If
Yes.
you see the history of China, Chinese, they had their policy that non-interference of other states' affairs. So
exactly.
they did not, you know, until they became this giant and economically strong, they did not say anything and did not interfere in the other affairs of other states. So now when they are in strong position, and now they have seen that how United States, they are looking Chinese, that how they are progressing, how they are developing, how economically they are becoming giant. So they are taking part in the international affairs.
Right.
So when
It brings in a new
yeah,
dimension.
absolutely. So this is why this official statement came from Chinese, basically the Foreign Office, that this is kind of bullying, because China is the largest country who is importing oil from Iran,
Right.
and they are saying that this is basically. And one thing more I just want to add, that if you see that how struggle it was behind this deal, then when this deal was not signed and Iran was not coming on the point, then other states there, France, Britain, Germany, and they took part, and even Chinese and Russia, they took part, and they brought this deal, and there was deal between United States and basically Iran that they will halt this, and they want to enrich uranium, and they won't go for the nuclear weapons and everything. And immediately when it was Trump administration, when he was even in his election campaign, he was saying all this, that this was basically a blunder on the part of United States, and when he will come in the power, and then he will retrieve these all things.
Yes.
And now they are going to do this, which they are not going to set a good precedent for whole international community, one thing, and second thing is that they are going to challenge basically China. And this is why Chinese, they said this is a kind of bullying, because other states, they are doing their trade with Iran, and this is Iran's right that to boost its economy. This is not the regime that you are going to punish them.
Yeah.
Basically, the people of Iran, they are getting, all kind of
But
suffering
National
from this.
Security
They are
Advisor John Bolton has even spoken about regime change when he's written an op-ed in the New York Times several years back before becoming national
But
security.
these are not the things
Yeah.
that you are going to punish the regime, and
Yeah.
ultimately it means that you are punishing the people.
Yeah,
Means they
absolutely.
are suffering. It's been 40 years they are suffering.
Yes.
There are violation of human rights, and when you have the slogan of this and you have notion of this that you are going to protect human rights, and here you see that how they are violating the people, they
Right.
are suffering. They are not getting their basic rights even in that.
Absolutely. And
So-
then the JCPOA parties were not just the US and
Absolutely,
Iran
yeah.
and China, there's also Britain, France, Germany and Russia. Britain, France and Germany, Europe has expressed its concerns about
Even, yeah.
Iran violating the uranium stockpile levels. But however, sir, we were talking earlier about Russia. Russia is also a player over there. That brings in another dimension.
Correct. Russia's stand is also close to Chinese. They don't subscribe to the American sanctions. They are having their business as usual. And now they have evolved a system, both, I mean, Russia, China, also India, that instead of relying on dollar, they have entered into currency swap agreements.
Okay.
So China, Russia, and India, they have their own currencies. They swap with Iran, and that's how they are continuing their business. So in that respect, when we talk about Russia, Russia is already, you can say, in tussle with the United States. There's a tiff going on between Russia and the United States. Primarily, it started with Georgia and Ukraine, but it has spanned to other regimes, including ANF, anti-nuclear forces agreement, which Russia said that if the United States are no more willing to subscribe to that, so they are not keen holding to that agreement. So this is also a serious development which is taking place. But in the regional context, I think United States, after becoming #1 power in the world, after the fall of the Soviet Union, I think they became a hyperpower. And that is causing
An imbalance. of
nervousness
sorts.
in the world,
Right.
because the kind of policies or intransigence which the United States has adopted on the world scene is causing unrest in the world also.
Absolutely. The sanctions are primarily on the oil and banking industry, which is causing a lot of harm to the Irani economy. There's also illegal oil crossing going on across the borders as well. There's always a backdoor channel going on. So the economy's still been hit hard, right? Dr. Masad, I mean, the people you were just talking about, the suffering that they've had to undergo. They have shortages of food in their markets, and the currency has devalued, among so many other things. So would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, basically my point was that United States, the deal was signed in 2015 and 2018, and you are saying that you are not allowing Iran that they can export their oil, and then banking sector and economy is basically their economy was already ruined, and then now they had a hope after this deal that they could boost their economy and they could do something for the people. They could develop their banking sector and the other import and export with other states, neighboring states, and
Right.
which is they're just gonna make their economy strong. But with this notion, which came with this Trump administration, that they are gonna hit their economy, that is gonna just make the people increase the suffering of the people of Iran. They are not going to deal with any other neighboring state. They are not going to export their oil. And then, what would you expect for Iran? And they are going for these states. They are going China, Russia, and other states. They are asking that we want to keep this deal, and they did not violate this deal
didn't,
basically,
yes.
because IAE, they confirmed that they had been inspecting and
Yes.
everything had been happening, and they did
Yeah,
not
they were
violate it. And
conforming,
yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So on what basis you are going to hit them?
So would you
And
like
what-
to add something?
Yeah, I think let's be clear about Iranian economy. Although it is based 85% on oil revenues,
True.
still Iran, when it comes to food items, is almost self-sufficient.
Okay.
Whether their staple is rice, of course they import close to 1.45 million tons of rice. Pakistan is one of the largest exporters, plus India. And at the same time, on as far as wheat is concerned, they are self-sufficient. On other products, as far as eatables are concerned or medicines are concerned, they have developed these sectors a lot. So on that count, when
So
you
primarily it's the oil industry.
well, that is their that earns them revenues.
Yes, exactly.
Revenues definitely have gone down, but at the same time, despite all these pressures on the Iranian economy, Iran's per capita GDP is still $4,700.
Right.
It is not Yemen or it is not Sudan or so we are not talking about that. It's a resource-rich country. It can still sustain, and there are still statistics that Iran has $60 billion stacked outside the country in the banks, and they are supporting their imports through those channels, including they are still buying goods from Europe and other countries.
Okay.
Yes, so for the time being, yes, there is a pressure on the Iranian economy because of the decrease in oil revenues. Still, Iranian economy is still, it can survive.
It's resilient.
It
Right.
is resilient because it's a rich country. It is not and
Yeah,
it
might
is
be-
after Saudi Arabia, it is the second largest economy in the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa.
Right.
Might
Okay,
be
that's
this is the region this is the reason that United States this is called basically international politics. They don't let them that they should rise and that they become the power of Middle East. Might be there are lots of factors behind that. We all know that the history of the relations, and this is why they don't have they are not enjoying good relation with Saudi Arabia. And then the United States is also putting pressure that they should not be self-sufficient and self-reliant, because of course that is a rich resource country and oil and everything, and they are having good trade with even India and China, which is the example that Chinese they are supporting, though they are importing oil from Iran, but they are strong supporter of Iranian sovereignty, and they are saying that they have the right that they can grow as other nations they are
Right.
growing and developing.
Okay, so let's move on to the immediate concerns right now with Iran. Abbas Mousavi, who's a spokesman for Iran's foreign ministry, he has said that their third step, Iran's third step, will be harder, more steadfast, and somehow stunning. And he's referring to the September 5th deadline for the next 60 days that they've given for the economic sanctions to come back. And the thing is that he's said that the country might consider going to a 20% enrichment or higher as its third step. This is the level that was present before the JCPOA agreement took place. 90% uranium is what is needed to make a nuclear bomb, right? And this is what they're
That
trying
is
to
called
prevent.
highly enriched uranium,
Right.
90% plus.
Okay.
Below 20% is low enriched uranium,
Right.
which can be used for peaceful purposes. Even 50% can be used for submarines and all that.
Okay.
So that's the threshold.
They've
but,
already gone up to 4.5%.
that's
and-
very minimal.
Yeah.
Now it's a chicken
but
game.
3.6% is
Yeah,
the
it's a
what
chicken
the
game
deal
which
allows.
Yeah.
now Iran is playing, Americans are playing.
Yes.
Now Iran's these threats are to the three European countries who are prima facie, they are running with the hare and hunting with the hound.
Okay. Germany,
But
France, and
Germany,
Britain.
France,
Right.
and UK. Well, and then I have said it earlier also that now, with retrospective effect, it looks as if America has been playing bad cop, and these three European countries are playing good cop. So they are telling Iran, no, you have to, obey by the agreement and all that. We'll try, we'll do something, we'll evolve some trading mechanism with you. They did, but of no use to Iran.
Yes.
So the trade has not increased, and more so, Iran cannot export its oil. That's the primary, as I said, almost 85% of Iran's revenue comes
Their revenue
through
stream
their
is-
exports,
Right.
oil exports. Its quota is 4 million barrels, but even after lifting of the sanctions, it was exporting 2.7 million barrels a day. But now it has come down to, I mean, 2/3 has gone. So this is something which is serious, yes, any
And
country.
then oil has a shelf life. It can't just be sitting there. It is
Well, it
useless
has to
after
be,
some
once
time.
you have, extracted it, it has to be sold. And so therefore, Iran is hard pressed, yes. So, and then there is a lobby in Iran, where hardliners, they were already opposed to entering into this kind of agreement. And I think they will now will be very happy that President Rouhani, who is considered to be a moderate, he has been deceived by the Europeans
Okay.
and the Americans. By signing this agreement, they were not happy, those hardliners. Now, I think they will press now President Rouhani to take extreme measures.
Okay, now if extreme measures are taken, Dr. Masad, what can happen next? Because, okay, if they start going to these levels, very high uranium enrichment levels and all of that, naturally that's going to be perceived as a threat by the US. What actions can be taken then by the US to counter that? And then it can escalate out of control. Do we at any point see the two parties coming together on a negotiating table and deciding, okay, come to an agreement on this?
Yeah, you rightly said that it could have consequences. Of course, if you are pressuring this much to Iran and you are pulling them to that point that they could, violate everything. And what they can do first, I guess, they could go for nuclear weapons, of course. They already said that. And second, that Strait of Hormuz, where world trade is happening, and they said that we can halt it and we can stop, and they can take extreme measures over there. And thirdly, I guess, the hardliners, as Asif Saab, he said already that they were already opposing this deal. They're West, they are just, they are putting them in kind of deceive, and they are cheating Iranian, and they had their point, and they would say that we were right, and might be they could get the sympathy from the public as well. So there could be extremism more, that could support those people, and they can come in the power.
Yeah.
So that could be, not good for the international community as well. And then one thing, if you allow me, I can just add that, it's been 30 years. United States, they had been stopping North Korea that they should not develop their nuclear weapons. And ultimately they come on the point that they have to negotiate with them. So whatever they are doing with Iran, they have to come on the negotiating table, because in international community, in international relations, every problem has a solution, and that solution comes through diplomatic means.
Absolutely.
So you have to come on that point.
But
So
there's
you should
always
realize
still
it.
a chance of a conflict and things escalating
That is
out
going
of
on, yes.
control, which is the
Absolutely.
concern of everybody right now, because they've come to a sort of a head, and it looks like a warlike situation in the making. But naturally, the ideal outcome would be that they have diplomatic
Negotiate,
talks and
absolutely.
negotiate and come to an end to this conflict. Right, Ambassador Durrani, would you like to add to that? Where do you think that this is going to end up?
I think with regard to North Korea, we should know that North Korea pulled out of Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, and which was an earth-shaking incident when North Korea pulled out of NPT. But they did it. Then they also conducted nuclear tests. So they declared themselves as a nuclear weapon state. Now, the United States' behavior with North Korea definitely is different, because
Yeah.
now it possesses nuclear weapons. With regard to Iran, they are not going to allow that. I think they have already, bitten from the North Koreans, so they will not allow Iran to do that or pursue that course. Negotiations are not a problem, because the United States is pressing Iran that while you have signed the JCPOA, there are two major issues to which you have not talked about and we would want you to discuss. One is missiles, Iran's missiles program, and second is Iran's policies in the Middle East, which they say are interventionist.
Okay.
Now, my suggestion, again, it's, United States Personally, I do not agree they are pulling out from the nuclear agreement JCPOA. But with regard to Iran's entering into negotiations on twin issues, i.e. Missiles and Iran's Middle East policies, I think there is some merit into that. Reason being that after all, Iran entered into an agreement, entered into negotiations with these powers when JCPOA was ultimately signed.
Right.
There is no harm in discussing missile and Iran's Middle East policies or giving assurances about a peaceful Middle East. And in that respect, personally, I can say that if they discuss missiles, so they can also talk about their safeguards, or they can ensure their own interests are protected. Similarly, on the Middle East policy, they can also, I think in negotiations, it is just not that one-way traffic.
Yeah.
You have to give and you have to take.
Absolutely.
So like JCPOA itself was a give and take.
Right.
So in that respect, Iran's stance that no, these are the out of purview of JCPOA agreement, these two issues, I think that is in this day and age and in this kind of a situation which the Middle East region faces, this is out of step.
Right.
And this shows intransigence on the part of Iran.
And now Pakistan's role in all of this. But Prime Minister Imran Khan has repeatedly said that he'd like to play a mediation role, and he'll be going to the US at the end of the month on July 22nd to meet with President Trump. So, Dr. Musarraf, will this be one of the topics that will be on the table? And also, there's so many other things that will be on the table in this trip. So, let's begin and discuss a bit about that.
Yeah, I guess it should be the topic of discussion between Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Trump, because Iran is a neighboring state, and we are also focusing on our economy, and we have to trade with Iran.
Yes.
And we should not get the pressure from United States if they are asking us that we should not trade with Iran.
Mm-hmm.
We should be very clear that if we are going to take steps to make our economy strong, we have to trade with Iran, one
Yes.
thing. And second thing is that might be Prime Minister Imran Khan, he can offer that he can play a role between Iran and Saudi Arabia, because this is a major conflict in the Middle East that both the states, they are now on cross purposes, Iranian and Saudi Arabian. If Pakistan play a positive role to bring both the states on negotiating table, and they can, if they are not going to resolve their issues, but at least they could come on a balance, and if Pakistan can play a role between both the states, it could be a positive prospects in
Very
future.
beneficial,
And they,
right.
of course, as Pakistan is playing role,
With
with Afghanistan, and then this is how President Trump, he appreciated this step, and might be this is the cause behind that both the head of the states, they are going to see each other, and then BLA, and they designated that this is a terrorist state, and that terrorist basically a group which is harming Pakistan's peace, and then CPAC and other things. So this is, on the part of Prime Minister, that how could he capitalize these things,
Yes.
and how could he offer that he could play a role between Iran, Saudi Arabia, and United States.
Absolutely.
So we have to do something, and it could be the agenda on the
Right. Ambassador
discussion
Durrani,
table.
what do you think are going to be the key points that Pakistan is going to take with its agenda to the US, to President Trump? What do you think Prime Minister Imran Khan is going to have on his list of priorities in this meeting?
I think Afghanistan is a primary subject.
Yes.
And the way Pakistan has facilitated this whole process between Taliban and the United States, and then subsequently at the regional level. So Pakistan's role has been acknowledged, appreciated.
Whereas in the past,
all
we were always negatively sort of seen and
Oh.
criticized for not doing enough.
But that
and
has not
about-
worked.
Yes.
When we were criticized, it did not work. For instance, President Trump's Twitter during the New Year Eve did not create a good taste
No,
here.
exactly.
It was not liked. And our Prime Minister told him point blank that this is not on and it's unacceptable. And they cannot just ignore our sacrifices, which we have rendered ever since this war against terror has
Absolutely.
started.
And no other country, PM Imran Khan, Prime Minister,
Correct.
said that no other country has done this much
Yes.
in terms of the number of lives lost, civilian and military, as well as the cost that it's
Correct.
economically cost our country, which is in the trillions of rupees.
Yes. So President Trump, he's a businessman. He did try to arm twist Pakistan. It did not work. But so businessmen then also they have Plan B. And then of course he wrote a letter to Prime Minister, and
Right.
he talked about let's please help us. So Pakistan is helping United States also to come out of Afghanistan, and of course it would be, and when there are the news is coming that there are positive vibes coming from Doha, and they are moving ahead
Yes.
on almost 4 issues. Even on the cessation of hostilities or ceasefire. Earlier Taliban were adamant, but now they seem to have agreed to that they are not. They'll calibrate their attacks, but they will avoid schools, mosques, and those places where civilians are involved. So they'll only hit the military targets. So this is a big development which has taken place in Doha.
Right.
Similarly, let me say about Prime Minister's visit that apart from Afghanistan, other issues are also linked, and where Pakistan's role cannot be ignored. First, we have already talked about Afghanistan. Second is this Middle East situation, where again Pakistan is a factor of stability.
Yeah.
Pakistan is on the confluence of Middle East. We are there. We are at the door of the Middle East. And if anything happens, Pakistan will also be affected badly. For instance, the Strait of Hormuz, from where 20% of world's oil passes, if that is choked, we will be the first one to be affected
Right.
by this
Right.
choking of the oil.
Right.
Simi-
Okay, due to the time limitations, I just want to ask Dr. Musarat also, will Kashmir be a talking point in this meeting? Because obviously the US has taken, usually had a very skewed policy towards India, and Kashmir is not ever really addressed. And where we see the Kashmiri freedom struggle as freedom fighters and all, the US views them as, they will label them terrorists due to India's stance. So do you think that there can be some kind of understanding with the US about this and the humanitarian situation in Kashmir, which is obviously something that Pakistan is not willing to back down about supporting the humanitarian cause of the Kashmiri
Absolutely.
people?
Absolutely. And most of the things Ambassador Saab he described in this, and one thing he was saying that positive vibes are coming concerning Prime Minister's visit to United States. I just want to add one thing more, that we have seen in the past that it had been happening that all the administration and bureaucratic things had been involved in arranging the trips and visits of both the states, Pakistan and the United States. This time it happened that President Trump, he realized this thing, and he is a kind of authoritative president. He don't listen. He
Yes.
doesn't listen to
Absolutely, yeah.
most of the time.
Has
So
very
he made
strong
it clear. Yeah.
opinions, yes.
So same, I guess, if I'm not wrong, we have a Prime Minister who realized the situation, and he sees the factual on the ground, and then he decides that what is. Though I have reserved my comments concerning domestic policy, but if you look at Pakistan's foreign policy and diplomatic fronts, we have achieved a lot. We are playing very positive,
Yes,
and we are
absolutely.
taking these things in a
Yeah,
right
especially in the
direction.
last couple of
So
months,
this is, if he said that positive vibes, yes, positive vibes are coming, and yes, Kashmir should be the most important thing that we should discuss with the United States, because without United States help we cannot capitalize these things. And it's been 70 years that Kashmiri, they are
5
fighting.
generations
Yeah,
have been
absolutely.
affected
So
by
they
the
are
struggle.
suffering.
Yeah.
So we have to bring, in this way, this government can do that,
Yes.
and they can achieve more results, and then we can make them realize, President Trump and the Trump administration, that this is a serious matter between India and Pakistan.
Yes,
This is
Ambassador
how we
Durrani,
are
any
not
final
getting.
thoughts about
Well,
this
final
meeting?
thoughts are
Stability and
that I think now we, being a nuclear power, Pakistan should also have less dependence on other countries to gain support.
Right.
I'm referring to Kashmir dispute. India did try in Pulwama, after Pulwama, to browbeat Pakistan, but it was adequately responded. So therefore, I think we should now change our tactics rather than depending on other countries to lend us support. Now, I think we can fight our own battle, and which we have been doing. And I think that has also shown to the world that Pakistan cannot be browbeaten. Well, by all means, Prime Minister can take up that issue, and I think that will be a permanent talking point. But at the same time, we have to rely on our own resources.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ambassador Durrani and Dr. Musarrat, for your insights on these very important topics today. Today is also the death anniversary of Fatma Jinnah, the 51st death anniversary of Fatma Jinnah, who's known as the mother of the nation. Fatma Jinnah is known as the Iron Lady and is still remembered for her passionate support for civil rights and her struggle towards the Pakistan movement. Many different organizations have held conferences and seminars to commemorate her services to the country and to the building of the nation and the making of the nation with Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, her brother. She studied in Karachi, and she is known as a source of the awakening of the women's rights movement as well, and she rose to stand as Pakistan's national symbol. Fatma Jinnah was educated as a dental surgeon, a biographer, and she was also a stateswoman, and she became a very close associate and advisor to her older brother, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. She was always by his side throughout his struggle, and she is known to be crucial in his struggle for Pakistan's existence and the making of Pakistan. Again, she is known as one of the key people who is a symbol for the awakening of women's rights in Pakistan, and she gets a lot of credit as a symbol of a Pakistani national symbol. Fatma Jinnah is her 51st death anniversary is being commemorated by conferences and seminars all over the country in different organizations to remember the services that she's given to this country. And now we're going to be speaking to Basharatullah Khan, who's going to be telling us about the movements in the stock markets today. A lot of developments are happening in Pakistan's economy, and naturally that's being reflected in the stock exchanges. So let's find out from Basharatullah Khan. Thank you so much for joining us today, Basharatullah Khan Sahab.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Can you please tell us now today, I mean, recently we've seen very lackluster kind of performance in the stock market. So what does it look like today?
The market saw some improvement today after 3 days of continuous decline. Last week, after IMF approval of loans for Pakistan, we have seen continuous selling pressure during last 3 days.
Yes.
Today, there was some respite in selling pressure. We saw some short covering as well. So the near-term market is looking at the monetary policy, which is expected to be announced by month end. So keeping in view some concern that there might be some more increase in the policy rate. So that's why we are seeing lackluster performance in the stock market. And but today we saw some improvement after 3 days of selling.
Right, because we've seen investors are showing a bit of hesitancy because of, in the last few days, as you were saying, due to concerns over the future of the economy, the austerity measures and the price changes in oil and the rupee devaluation and all of that. So which sectors would you say looked better today?
Today, overall, there was some improvement across the board. We saw, especially some recovery in banking stocks, textile sectors, in cement sector, for example, which was under selling pressure. Today, we saw mixed performance. So, market is main focus right now is the next monetary policy, which is expected to be announced later in the month. If there is a substantial increase or some increase in interest rate, so which will not be good for the stock market generally speaking, but if there is a pause in interest rate increase, so that will be positive trigger for the market.
Right. So which stocks are the investors advised that is safe to get into at the moment? Because naturally when the stock prices are low is the best time to invest in stocks.
Right now, the overall market performance in the near term is likely to remain subdued. There are some sectors, especially the banking sector, the oil and gas exploration sector, and plus I would also like say about textile sector. There are some positive triggers, and especially the prices have also fallen substantially in recent past. So these sectors might be the prime beneficiary, keeping in view the current macroeconomic situation. But overall, we are not expecting like a major price rally in the near term, keeping in view concerns over the interest rate and concern over the outlook for rupee.
Thank you so much, Basharatullah Khan Sahab, for telling us about the situation with the stock markets today. And that's all for today's program. Thank you for joining World Today. I'm Sharmeen Ali. Allah Hafiz. Bye-bye and see you tomorrow.